All right, welcome everyone to, I think this is our fifth meeting of the Continuing Education and Certification Task Force. We have kind of an intense week of activity with meeting today and then again on Wednesday. And so with that, I'll go ahead and share my screen. And then what we'll do is work through just some of the information that have, and then I'm really curious and interested to know what your thoughts and questions were based on some of the feedback that we got with the last survey, and then the initial draft of the kind of recommendations that I've synthesized from all of our discussions and then all of the feedback. So we want to focus in on the staff track feedback, and then preview those recommendations and discussion about what's missing, what might need to be added, what should change. We'll see if we have any guests who join us for comment, and talk a little bit about next steps. We'll also kind of cover that ground a little bit on Wednesday when we meet, with really a focus on the recommendation summary and any other thoughts that we've had between today and when we meet again on Wednesday. So we're going to prioritize topics and changes, and then just have our rich discussion and provide feedback that will help us get to a more, I guess, fully fleshed out and agreeable set of recommendations from the task force. So I'm going to pause and just say see if there were any questions or thoughts that you wanted to start out with. Please do feel free to just unmute, or if you need to use the chat, do that. And before we jump into this, just wanted to see if there were any preliminary thoughts. All right, well, hearing none, I'm sure we will jump right in, but we have feedback on the voluntary staff track. And so I sent you a document that has all of the comments that were received, and they're separated out from people who are library staff that replied to the survey. And then I also disaggregated the library director's comments and information in that other document. And I've got that here if we want to take a look at that more closely. But just in general, one of the things that struck me as kind of asked these questions before is how many people are actually aware that there is or was a voluntary staff certification track. And this is just a chart that shows the total number of responses. And I think it's really good that the majority of people were actually aware that there was a staff track for certification. And so I think that plays really well into goals of the program being around promoting the opportunity to become certified. The other thing that we got some replies on is the current requirements for that staff track. And then through our discussions last time, I've kind of pulled together these two options that go along the lines of providing flexibility and kind of being able to more personalize the type of credits and courses and workshops that people want to take. But also, we're still talking a lot and hearing a lot about having to have a balance, or wanting to have a balance of different types of learning be a desirable thing to extend the knowledge and skills of our library staff members. So the numbers at the bottom, 7 of the, and this is the total number of responses, which was 40 basically. 7 said yes, keep the current requirements. 16 replied that the first option, which would decrease the number of credits in the required categories, and with more electives being possible then. And then it's kind of a split. So like the really open option of 60 hours and then everything is elective. That second option got 17 votes. So it's hard to discern what the pulse might be, or what a strong recommendation would be that's supported by library staff members or directors in that. So I just wanted to pause here and see if you had any questions or kind of reactions to the results of that survey that we put out this last time.
That's what I thought was interesting, was there was no clear winner on these opinions. It was so split so evenly in a couple of the different ones. So that makes it really difficult. Half the people aren't going to be happy whichever way you go, that kind of a thing. So I don't know, it doesn't really give you a definite path, a clear way to go. So I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is Robin. I think it's interesting also, but I do think that comparatively, they obviously want more elective credits, whether it's 60 elective credits or 40 elective credits. That's what I see the comparison.
Yeah, that flexibility, I think that really does shine through regardless.
Dave.
Yeah, hi Dave.
I got the flavor from reading the comments from both the directors and the staff that although option one did not win, I didn't get the sense that people were unhappy with having to be a little bit well-rounded. I think 40 elective units in option one gives somebody the opportunity to cone down on a specialization area if that's what they have and desire. And I also got the feeling that, I guess, and I haven't explored it enough, but it seems like tech credits are the big bugaboo. And the reason that they didn't like the current requirements because everybody's having trouble getting 10 units. At least that was what I was getting from the comments. And so I'm curious if people would, if the tech credits were somehow bolstered or extended in, how long they're effective, that that first option might be, because I think 40 units elective is still a generous proportion out of 60. But I'm curious what others think.
I don't know if you can see the chat, Colette. Miranda, okay, said that people were frustrated, and Jennifer said the same thing. Those technology and collection management credits are difficult to get. So I agree with the comments that having a little more flexibility might be attractive to people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts? And I know Tina, Miranda, Jennifer are all covering and able to speak up occasionally, but not always using their voice. So any other thoughts on this? I agree that, flexibility, allowing specialization, and then also the other thing I think I've tried to capture and summarize in general recommendations is, providing more options and providing more, I guess, clear guidance around what counts as technology, what counts as collection management and technical services. So I think those are, in my mind, are really coming together as very clear direction, both for kind of general recommendations and then specifically for any options for the staff track. So let's go ahead and look at the part-time options that we talked about last time. And I was really curious to see what kind of feedback or reaction that we would get on the idea of another track, which would be for part-time employees. And so again, there's kind of an interesting split, really ultimately between option one, it's just, the way that they're presented, option one, option three, but then also either none of the above and option two kind of are equalizers in the number of responses. And so with the comments, I didn't necessarily, just in the way that I read them, I didn't necessarily pick up on a clear direction about how valuable it would be to offer a part-time option. So I'm just really curious what your thoughts are too, based on the comments that we got, and then any other questions that we might need to ask.
Colleague, again, considering what we discussed last meeting, I think a lot of it kind of circles around what's part-time. You have directors that are half-time, and as one respondent said, I've got a 30-hour person, a 15-hour person, and a 10-hour person. Which one's part-time? So I think that plays into some of these dynamics of decision-making, and I think that's what we kind of expected. And so I didn't get a clear feel of what's a good path for this, although I think people want more flexibility, and I think again, having the difficulty of being able to categorize what they're doing encourages them to go elective if they're not sure what categories they're in, or if they can't get them in an MLA conference or something. So I think those things all play into where they're picking. I'm just curious if others think differently.
I agree. As I was thinking about this, I was thinking, yeah, you have a lot of directors who are, only part-time, half-time, something. So if you're a director, but you're part-time, which track do you go with? I could see it could be confusing. So I don't know that part-time really is the way to go. And I know some of the comments were that many hours isn't that difficult to get. I'm thinking the comment someone said it doesn't seem like it would be that hard no matter what. So I'm thinking, yeah, maybe a part-time track isn't so necessary, because like you say, then it's confusing. How do you establish who's what and where do they count and fall into things? So I think that might just add to confusion rather than making it more clear.
Robin's head is nodding.
I was really excited about the potential for this part-time track, but I agree with everyone. It could be a little messy. I think it could be cleared up as far as directors and just say part-time staff, non-direct, not for directors, or some specification. But again, and I can only speak for my own staff. Sometimes it's difficult for them to get their hours in. However, they have, well, for my staff, we're shortened a year because of my board. It's still easy for them to get it within that 3 years. So I guess while this is nice, it's nice that some could have this option, because I think it would make a huge difference to having more staff members complete their certification by offering this. But again, I guess it would have to be, like everyone's saying, things would have to be ironed out a little, and just be a little clearer on sorry, my words aren't coming to me today.
You're doing
Just
great.
be a little clearer on I'm rambling. But anyway, so yeah.
I think, one of the written comments, and then I've had a couple of conversations where making the number of credits divisible by 4 years seemed to be something, offered in terms of simplifying or making things more clear. I'm not sure what I think about that, especially for part-time, and the comment about, part-time being a pretty difficult thing to define because of the different roles that people play, both as directors, and then library staff, people who don't have those directors' responsibilities. So, yeah. Any other thoughts, or just with the way that this is presented, anything that pops out as maybe another option to look at?
Colette, I had a question, a lot of these
Sure.
webinar things, what is their expiration date on them? Some comments were, extend the duration of offerings because somebody might want to use it, but 4 years is a long period of time. Some things come in and out of date, I guess. I don't have that much familiarity with it, but some of the times that I've been certified in the past for something else, but they used a shorter time frame, and I'm not trying to disrupt the boat, but to keep people familiar with the program, if as a lot of people are procrastinators, it's in that 4th year that every 4th year they'll revisit your website and start pounding hours. I mean, with 60 hours, maybe not, but a lot of my colleagues did exactly that, and I'm getting phone calls in the last 3 weeks before the research's over to get it done. And so I don't know if a shorter period in the future, if we want to look at something down the road, but we've had some better luck by keeping people in the system of using the programs that you provide for us on a more frequent basis, and just as a general thought over time. So I don't know what the extent of those eligibility to use a webinar. Does it go for 3 years or 5 years? I'm not sure how they expire.
That's a really good question, and it's a comment that came up in each of the 3 surveys that we've done about the, kind of the shelf life or the expiration of webinar recordings and that sort of thing. And I think that's something that we can definitely do some work on when I'm working on the actual certification manual. And in some ways it's kind of a philosophical stance that the continuing ed coordinator has had and can have. And so I'm definitely of a mind that if the flexibility and the choice is really in the hands of the individual who is becoming certified to choose the things that are most meaningful to them, and both the state library is creating material that meets that need, and we're able to either license or purchase content from other providers. It really becomes less important what the creation date of a recording is if the content is still relevant, interesting, and accessible to the people who really want to have access to that. So I guess I'm of the mind that helping people make good choices about the workshops and the recordings and the courses that they take, like that's really an important thing. And it may be less important that something is date stamped. In some cases we have some really high demand videos that were made 10 years ago, but the content is still really good. It's still actually very relevant. And it's presented in a way that people want to continue to access. So I don't see any reason to, restrict somebody's ability to choose that if that's what they really need and want.
Yeah, I've watched some of, and I may have said this before, some of Tracy Cook's old videos, and they're very pertinent still today.
So I think the short answer is that we can definitely fix that by making it more clear that it's okay.
Yeah, by having stuff that doesn't expire so soon, like something that's more than a year old, gives people more options, and it will make it easier to get some of those credits too, I think. So as long as things are still relevant and current and accurate, I agree. I don't think the date is as critical as the content.
Yeah. Okay, I know our thoughts will continue to kind of develop around this, and I want to circle back to the staff and the part-time options on Wednesday. But I did want to give us a chance to look at kind of a preliminary draft of recommendations. Again, this is kind of how I have synthesized our discussions and reading through the feedback that we've received. And so one of the things that we talked about are, having clear, measurable, a few really good goals for the program that then can lead towards the development of the activities and the work that will support us being able to actually achieve these goals. And so there was a piece missing. And so the third goal is this is maybe the first time that you're seeing this, but there was this idea that continuing education opportunities, we need to provide those. I think that gets to what we were just talking about, and that they do actually benefit library directors, staff, and trustees. And so this was just kind of a first draft of putting together those ideas. And Pam was really helpful to put her head together with mine a little bit on that. So I just wanted to present this and see what questions or suggestions you might have. Is this a missing piece, and what could we do to improve what this says?
I think those are 3 excellent goals. How to add, I can't even imagine. They're very, I think they include everything, and they're admirable goals.
I would
think
agree
the,
with.
oh,
Go ahead.
sorry,
Sorry.
1 sec. I think providing continuing education opportunities that benefit. I mean, that is an excellent way to put that.
The only thing I was going to be a nitpicker on the first one, promote continuing education and its impact. I would, and display its impact, or somehow, or demonstrate, promote continuing education and demonstrate its impact for the quality. I would just add some other word just to flesh that out. But I know what you mean, but find a way to demonstrate what we're doing. I don't know if we can measure it in if there's already a system to measure the impact, but however we do that.
I really like the inclusion of the word demonstrate, because that does kind of put the emphasis on, well, yes, you're going to do that, but what does it look like? And that really suggests those metrics, those measurable statements or things that we would measure. So I like demonstrate a lot.
Okay.
Okay, as always, we'll continue to kind of marinate on our thoughts with these things. I want to make sure we have time together to take a look and see what our brains come up with. So this next recommendation, I think, and I put this second just because it seems that it's something that there is consensus around, both in the feedback that we've received and based on our last discussion, that the voluntary trustee track would remain with the same requirements that it currently has. So I wanted to put that out there as if that were a recommendation, and see what your thoughts were around that.
I've spoken to several of the local trustees, and I think that, as we discussed last time also, with the introduction of the new 3-hour per year board quorum requirement, I think they were happy to just leave this as it is, at least for a short period, while we're trying to iron out those questions. So that was the main feeling I got from the few discussions I had.
Great.
I agree with David. I think it's good the way it is, and it doesn't seem to be too much for most trustees, I guess. Some have a hard time, but with the 3 hours required, it does make it a little easier for them to acquire the certification.
Tina and Miranda are saying that they agree in the chat as well. Okay, gonna go ahead to the next one, which is library administration. And again, I'm presenting this as a recommendation just for your reaction and to see how it sits with you. And you know, in some ways, our feedback really leaned towards having option for initial certification, and then something different for when a director would renew after that first 4-year period. I think it, you know, just based on the feedback, it ticks some of the boxes around flexibility and acknowledging kind of, you know, more long-term experience, that somebody's needs might change after their initial certification. So just your thoughts again, what's your comfort level with saying that this would be a recommendation that would come from this task force? You can reply in an emoji if you like. Smiley face, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle.
I'm wholeheartedly behind this. I love it.
Lots of thumbs up. Okay. All right, well, we can circle back to this too. And again, Wednesday, we'll look at the library or the staff track again too. But I also wanted to give us a chance to look at some more general recommendations. And just as a reminder, you know, our work is to really kind of dig into what is and think about what's possible, to gather feedback, and then summarize those recommendations for our Network Advisory Council to consider and to wrestle with as well. And then probably in the June 2023 State Library Commission meeting. That would be when the commission would be looking at the recommendations and starting the process to take action to adopt or approve the changes that have been recommended. So, we're forming recommendations that may change in some format with additional feedback that happens between now and when the Network Advisory Council and then the State Library Commission are looking at this as well. So I just wanted to again synthesize some general recommendations or general statements that I think will be really helpful for the NAC, the Network Advisory Council, as well as providing some direct feedback for us as we develop our work plans to potentially implement some of the changes. So in general, we want to have something that is fewer, clearer, measurable, and actionable in terms of the goals of the program. Want to emphasize simplification and flexibility for library administration track. Maintain the trustee track as voluntary with the current requirements. To make some adjustment, we're not quite sure yet what that is around the voluntary staff track, but also very much to our conversation. We heard and have heard that we really need to address that user experience with Aspen, which is the tool that we use to track certification and continuing education. We definitely want to provide those lists or courses of study essentially for each certification track. So we would do a better job of providing a roadmap for how to be successful. And I think it's really important that we have an accessible and consistent plan, essentially a marketing plan that really helps us focus in that promotion of the opportunity, not just for certification, but to engage in the types of continuing education that the State Library can provide. And then the last bullet is something I wanted to include as a point of discussion for us today. Any changes in requirements would require changes in the actual programming, the coding of Aspen. And it's hard to predict how long that might take with changes in staffing and that sort of thing. But I wanted to put in something that might be a realistic implementation date for changes. And then just kind of have your thoughts around that. So is there anything missing from these general recommendations? And how do they sit with you? Are you feeling warm and fuzzy, or is there something that gives you pause? And we want to dig into that.
Colay, just as a on the wording, I mean, I don't think that these, we use the term simplification twice. I think both of them are, they're already, I think they're pretty straightforward. I'd like to find some way to put in there that, as we adjust these, we're trying to provide increased goal-oriented, because each of these institutions that are around the state have different goals for their staff, in addition to the flexibility and, for individualized goal achievement, something in that nature. Because that's what I think we're trying to allow in every one of the tracks to, after the certification, increase their elective choices, but also give them guidance with the coursework so that they can achieve a specialization if that's their goal.
Thank you. I'm scribbling notes.
Maybe simplification isn't the word we need. Maybe just to allow flexibility might cover it enough, and at least the administration track, and maybe the staff track also. But yeah, maybe we don't need simplification.
Yeah, I don't know if you need any other word other than flexibility, but you know, but if you wanted to drill down, you could say, because with our goal of being able to provide some type of individual goal achievement methods improvement by increasing the electives and also designating them in coursework and lists to help folks do that.
Mhm.
You know, as a trustee, I'd like to, if there was a course list that said, okay, because I'm on our finance committee, if there's recommendations from the state library that says, you know, if you're on the finance committee, these would be the best 3 or 5 hours or whatever it is that you should look at or have under your belt. Those would be immensely helpful towards achieving that type of thing.
I want to give everyone time to kind of think and consider, but what I'll do is, if not by the end of the day today, first thing tomorrow, I'll send out kind of a version 2 of this particular list of things. Just with those notes that I have from what you've said so far. Okay, well, I don't want to belabor any points or take up more time this afternoon than we need to. I think it was really good to get reoriented and kind of convene back today before we would meet again this Wednesday. I am observing that we do not have any guests today to provide public comment, but maybe someday, maybe Wednesday, you never know. And just reminders too that you know, we started this journey with presenting a plan back in May to the Network Advisory Council, presented the plan for updating this program and did that with the State Library Commission back in June. We did our call for task force participation and started gathering feedback over the summer. We've been meeting since the end of September and have had 3 surveys that we've done to gather additional feedback to inform our discussions. The next steps after this Wednesday are to, again, summarize and have a draft of program recommendations for then presentation and discussion by the Network Advisory Council, and then moving forward to the State Library Commission for their discussion and consideration of changes to the program. And then looking at next August of 2023, that seems hard to believe that we're really only 6 weeks away or less than 6 weeks away from 2023. But to have, you know, kind of the details as best we can, kind of set into a usable manual, and then potentially looking at implementation of the program as of July 1 of 2024. And I think that was important too, not just because of programming needs and kind of the nitty-gritty working through all the documentation and that, but also that's very consistent with the schedule that is used when For instance, when the public library standards were updated and changed, there was action by the commission in 2020 and then, or 2021, and then July 1 of 2022 was the effective date. So that year between when something is adopted and then when it's actually expected to be implemented, both by the state library and then, you know, new people coming into the certification program, those would be the rules that applied to them as they were starting in 2024. So that, you know, there's another kind of practical part of this, which is a transition between new recommendations or requirements and kind of the rules that had been in place, you know, since 2009. So that's just another consideration in looking at when the new requirements would be put into place. Any questions about that or any comments?
I don't have one on that, Cole.
Yeah.
But on just in the addressing user experience with the Aspirin to eliminate barriers. I don't know if there's a way we can flesh that out just a little bit more in the sense that if there was a webinar developed, which basically, you know, the trustees are going to be the least familiar with this, and we've just gotten 2 new ones on our board. If there was ever a desire to have, you know, Tracy Cook does a great job with all her videos or, you know, you would be perfect for something like this, not try to give you more work, but to have something that shows you how to onboard with this system as a, you know, as a an intro thing. So, because you're going to field the calls one way or the other. I know I'm going to have to call you some more to understand it. That would take us through a basic setup of how we interact with this system might be very advantageous and in the long run be very helpful and simplify your work by fielding a lot of calls for, because I still am not comfortable with a lot of the interaction with it. So if that, I don't know how we would phrase that, but you know, an easier way to onboard onto the system so that we could you know, interact with it in a favorable and satisfactory way for all involved might be helpful and increase your level of satisfaction with the system. And, you know, and I think that's where our goal is. So.
Yeah, very, very true. Okay, so we did talk about some topics and changes for library staff track requirements, and we'll revisit that Wednesday. We've looked at the goals and library administration and trustee track drafts. We've reviewed our next steps. And I think I have some good notes to then provide an updated draft of recommendations and ideas for Wednesday. I know it's a tight and quick turnaround for, you know, so I'll get things to you as quickly as I possibly can, probably first thing tomorrow morning. And then we'll have our final discussions on Wednesday. Now, and I say final discussions, I'm totally open if we need to reconvene, maybe even after the new year when things have kind of, again, marinated. I love marinating things. That it just, you know, makes the flavors all wonderful and come together so beautifully. But at any rate, I want to leave the door open to that too, that if we needed to have another discussion, we would do that as well. So we are scheduled to meet again on Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel. And like I said, I'll get materials to you to look at as soon as I possibly can. And other than that, please do, if you have any thoughts and or questions or anything that occurs to you between now and then, please do send me an email or give me a call to to rest of the day today, and then most of the day tomorrow until about 3 o'clock. I'm available to take calls and that. So I'm just focused on putting together our materials for Wednesday. So be happy to visit if anything occurs to you between now and then. All right. With that, thank you so much for effective and efficient use of our time this afternoon. And I'll give you more food for thought for Wednesday. And other than that, thanks so much. And I will get the recording posted as well.